Hello, 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 and they are coming for her. Who's coming for her, you ask? Well, just like student loans come for me, the Ghost Sisters are coming for Ash Blossom to replace her as the best and most used hand trap in the TCG, OCG, and even Master Duel. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look and see why pros are starting to replace Ash Blossom with Ghost Ogre. What does Ghost Ogre do? Well, when a monster on the field activates its effect, or when, here's the big part, when a spell or trap activates that is face up on the field, you can send this card from the hand or field, by the way, to the graveyard and destroy that card on the field. And here's why this is good. Before, let me just say why it was bad. They would normal summon a card and you would destroy it and they would get to add anyways. That's where Ash Blossom came better. Well, now there's a specific clause with continuous spells and field spells where they need to be on the field, activate, and to resolve their effects, they need to still be on the field, and if they're destroyed, that doesn't get to happen. Well, when Ghost Ogre destroys these cards, they don't get to add. So not only now do you get the Ash Blossom effect, but you get to destroy these continuous and field spells as well. Let me show you what I'm talking about, these meta threats. First, I'm going to talk about the continuous spells, right? The Barriers of the Voiceless Voice, Ragnarika Bloom, and King Sarcophagus are cards that have recently came out. Ragnarika Bloom and Voiceless Voice, these continuous spells will both add from a monster from the deck to the hand. That's where you chain Ghost Ogre to destroy them. And King Sarcophagus, too, will send a card from the hand to the graveyard and try to send a Horus card from deck to graveyard. And that's where you can destroy it as well, making them not only go minus, but you also destroy that card so they can go -2 and they can't do the effects. Devastating, absolutely devastating using the Ghost Ogre on these cards. But that's just these cards, and those are kind of like tier 2 cards. We want to know about the tier 1 cards, Tenpai Dragons especially. Look at this line right here. Tenpai Dragons have been devastating because look, fire dragon monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. During the main phase, you can add a Tenpai Dragon monster from the deck to the hand. And you can see why that right there is absolutely devastating. Not being able to affect the Tenpai Dragons is why Tenpai Dragons has been giving Snake Eyes a run for their money. And it's also even good against the Fire King Island and the Yugioh cards too. The Yugioh field spell as well that's trying to add to the hand. You could see Ash Blossom, if it was used here, it would just negate. But Ghost Ogre now has the advantage where it not only negates, but it will destroy it as well, and they still won't get the effect. And especially in Tenpai, they won't get the unaffected part. Now, what's really interesting too is these two cards here have been very prevalent in the meta. Doesn't matter if you're playing OCG, TCG, or Master Duel, Ghost Ogre is an absolute beast against IP Masquerena and SP Little Knight. We have to start using Ghost Ogre more, and even if that means cutting 1 or 2 Ash Blossoms, it's pretty much going to be worth it. Now, let's jump into the next one. The next card I want to talk to you about is, very specifically, Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion. Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion is a little different. See, when a card or effect is activated that includes these effects, basically if someone's moving around something in the graveyard, right? If they're adding a card from the graveyard from the hand, deck, or extra deck, so if they're moving it from the graveyard there, if they're trying to special summon a monster from the graveyard, or if they're trying to banish a card from the graveyard, that's when we can use Ghost Belle. And Ghost Belle has been particularly effective against Snake Eyes. These 3 cards in particular all try to shuffle around. They either move cards around themselves or specifically summon cards from the graveyard. Both of them, especially Promethean and Flamberge, have 2 effects that both interact with Ghost Belle. So that's very interesting, and that's good to keep. Even if you're not main decking Ghost Belle, it's great to have in your side deck. You can main deck this card even in Master Duel because it is pretty good, especially since Snake Eyes right now is the best tier 1 card. So, just want to point that out to you and see why people are also putting in Ghost Belle, especially in their side deck for Snake Eyes. Let's talk about another interesting Ghost Sister, and that one especially is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites because it has a very fun effect. And that's each time your opponent is special summoning. By the way, you do the same thing. You discard this during either turn, your turn or the enemy's turn. you discard it to the graveyard, except the end phase. For whatever reason, you can't do it in the end phase. But every time your opponent special summons an effect monster, you gain life points equals to that monster's attack. It's a very fun card. But by the way, if they choose not to special summon and you didn't chain it to where they're summoning, and you don't gain any life points, your life points are cut in half. That's sometimes it's fine, because it might just end their turn anyways, and that just might be worth it. But if they do special summon, you're gaining life points. And what that is that's not really, for the most part, a good effect, but it is if you're playing TCG and you're in game 3. You can win through time with this card. It's a very good time card, so it makes it a very good side deck card, and which is why I kind of like it, because it definitely puts pressure on the opponent to try to go fast and they make mistakes. So it's definitely good in the extra deck there. But it's also good in burn and stun strategies. I'm sorry, everyone, but it is. The burn and stun is, by the way, tier probably 4 or 5, especially not even rogue. But it's fun to use it there. And also in different archetypes, such as the aroma cards that like to get higher life points and get beneficial effects. So you can see here that while it's not as prevalent and useful as Ghost Ogre, it has its uses. And it might be interesting just to keep awareness, because it makes your opponent lose a turn, but you also lose a turn as well. Interesting. I would mostly use it for time. Now, I really want to talk about this, especially Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. This card is used especially during tier 0 metas, and let me explain why. Because here's the condition: if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, quick effect, discard this card, reveal a card in your extra deck, then look through your opponent's extra deck and banish all cards in their extra deck with the name of the revealed card. This is why it's used in tier 0 metas, because when you can pretty much assuredly know when 80% plus of the players are playing tier 1, tier 0 cards. So think when tier elements was played at above 75%. Kikalos was the target for this. You would put Kikalos in your deck, even if you weren't running a tier deck, right? You were playing Labyrinth. You would reveal the Kikalos and banish it. And then they could not use that card because it was banished, unless they had the combo to get it back from the banish pile. Similarly, now we're talking about Promethean Princess and even the 10 pies. We can use that if you're using a deck that will not need all of its extra deck, and you know you're going second, so it could side into a good side deck card, or you only summon maybe one monster, you end on a Towers monster, and you don't have that much extra deck. You can sneak this card in and use it against 10 pie and Promethean Princess. Very good card, very strong card. Keep an eye out for it. The card is always on watch, and we hit tier 0 metas. That's when she tends to rear her head. Going into another one of these very interesting ones. This one I find to be one of the more interesting of the Ghost Sisters, and the reason why is because it's a negate. And we're talking about negate, so if your opponent special summons a monster, then that's how you can discard this card. Target one of those monsters and negate its effects. What's interesting is it only has to be your opponent has to special summon a monster or monsters for you to be able to use this effect. You could use it on your turn or your opponent's turn, unlike, let's say, Effect Veiler, right? So that's pretty interesting. The other interesting aspect of it has a little bit of a burn property to it, where if that monster leaves the field, the controller takes damage equal to its original attack. So like the other card that was giving you life points, Spooky Dogwood, this Ghost Mourner can also be used in time because it's a burn damage effect. But with that said, if you're not using it for burn damage, right, and you're not trying to use it in time, these 3 cards, I feel, are the ones that it's competing for a slot with, right? Like I said, I was mentioning Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is targets the opponent's monsters on their turn, though, and it could be any monster. It doesn't have to be special summon. And what's interesting is now that Effect Veiler is more of the cards that come out that are adding and being starters are not the normal summon anymore. That's usually the special summon. So I could see Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chili competing with Effect Veiler. Psyframe Gear Gamma usually just has its own slot and it does its own thing. People that are playing Gamma are usually playing it for other reasons than the negate as well. They do maybe do a lot of spell cards too that can bait an Ash or can bait stuff like Maxx. So it has its purpose there. It has its own unique purpose. I don't really think it's competing with Chili that much. And Infinite Impermanence, I think, is in a league of its own. I think Infinite Impermanence is the premier negate card when we're talking about negates because it doesn't send a monster to the graveyard, which means it can't be negated by called by. So that takes away a card out that can harm that negate there. And also Imperm can be used on your turn, your opponent's turn. I think that one's the strongest one. So normally what people do is they'll max out on Imperms and then they're choosing between Effect Veiler or Gamma. But Chili can have its place with, especially with that burn effect. And if you need more negates or if you're in time, Chili, Ghost Mourner, and Moonlight Chili could be the card for you. Now, finally, we're talking about the big dog herself. That's right, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This card, if you don't know what she does, basically, if your opponent is trying to add a card from the deck, special summon from the deck, or send a card from the deck to the graveyard, that's how you can use Ash Blossom. These are some of the, also not counting the ghost cards, that people have been going in and out with Ash Blossom for, right? If it's a search heavy meta, we see Droll taking that spot, or if it's a special summon meta, Nibiru takes that spot. Again, Psyframe Gear has its own unique purpose, but I do want to look at the Master Duel percentages. It's been going down slightly. You could see here that this was in January of last year. I'm also putting Maxx because in Master Duel, you know, Ash Blossom is mainly used to counter Maxx. This was in January. It was used at 91%. And then this was its latest. It's being used now at 87%. And this is no doubt in part because Hita is being used against Ash Blossom users. What Hita does is if there's a fire monster in your opponent's graveyard, you can special summon it. So because we're using Ash Blossom, now our opponents that are using Hita can link climb into OTK with like Access Code Talkers, or they could go into their Link 3 Promethean Princess. Very, very powerful. With that said, when we're talking about Ash Blossoms and we're talking about taking it out of our deck, the two cards of the ghost cards that I would really consider heavily doing that for is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Like I said, especially if you're playing in the TCG now, you don't have to worry about Maxx. And all Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion. If you're playing in Master Duel now, maybe not take out Ash Blossom. I'll show you some calculations in a second. I'm going to let you determine that if you think it's worth it or not. You can supplement it, definitely supplement it. And maybe take out 1 or 2 copies because I'll show you why. Because when we're talking about Maxx, there's some calculations I want to show you. And also, I think Maxx's time is limited because of this multi-chummy card, which is going to be the new Maxx on the block, so to say, rumors say. And the rumor is that when this card comes out, Maxx is going to be banned. But that could be a video in itself, and I digress. I don't want to talk about rumors and stuff. I want to talk about math and cold, hard facts. And here's the cold hard facts with Ash Blossom. If you're running all 3 Ash Blossoms in a 40 card deck, the odds for you to see all 3 of them, right, is 0.1%. And here's something funny. And we'll get to that in a second. To see 2 of them is 3.54, right, to see 2 Ash Blossoms. And to see your lone copy of Ash Blossom, you have a 30% chance. That means the odds to see at least 1 Ash Blossom, you can add them all up, is about 33.6%. Here's the math just for, let me just give you quickly, 60 card deck, right? This is just the math for a 60 card deck. I just want to throw it out there so you have it. But here's the interesting thing that I want to show you. When we're talking about Ash Blossom and Maxx together, the odds that Ash Blossom will negate Maxx's effect in Master Duel or something like that, you have a 30% chance, right, to get that copy of Ash Blossom. 33, I guess, for more than 1. Similarly, same thing, the 30% to see 1 Maxx or the 33%. When you multiply those together to get the actual odds, it's about a 9%, right? If you're just taking the 30 odds to 10% chance that your Ash Blossom will actually negate the Maxx. So that means in 1 in 10 games, if you're running, right? I'm going to use the 10% number. I'll show you that math later. That means if you're running Ash Blossom, you're running 3 of, she's only going to negate Maxx 1 in 10 games. Is that enough? Do you think that's worth it, right? If we're solely running Ash Blossom, and not for her other effects, right? She does have the utility purposes for other things, but if we're getting comboed by Hida and all of this stuff, is it really worth it, that 10%? That's the question I'm going to leave you with. You tell me in the comments if you think that 10% is worth it. I don't know, but definitely when those new cards come to Master Duel, I'm switching to Ghost Ogre, no doubt about it in my mind. I'm already running Ghost Ogre over Ash Blossom in some of my decks, so I think you should too. Here's something though, I do have a riddle for you, and this is just outside. There's one more Ghost card that's a tuner with 0 attack, Ghost, in its name. What is it? What is it? And I'll tell you in just a second, because right now I want to know if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed these stats and you like to see more statistical videos. I urge you to subscribe. Come join the Discord. I'll leave a link to that in the comments below. Just give the video a like and subscribe. Now, on to the riddle. What's the card with that's a tuner, Ghost in its name, 0 attack? What is it? Ooh. Well, it's actually Scapegoat. That's a tuner. It's a Ghost. Has 0 attack. It's technically a Ghost card. So if they do make an interesting archetype with the Ghost cards, Scapegoat might be a part of it. Interesting. I don't think they will, but it's good to know, you know, if they ever make a card that searches Ghost, right? Well, anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.